Welcome to 2025. This is, of course, Coffee Corner Motorsport, Four Beans a podcast, where I bring you all the latest news from my shed with my coffee. So, welcome to a new year, a new episode, and something a little bit different. Now, followers of the podcast will realise that, well, I'm notoriously terrible for dropping podcasts. So, my news resolution is that you're going to get a weekly regular podcast as a minimum of all of the news that comes on in the Formula One paddock. We're going to call it Expresso News, keep it in with the old. So here we are with the first episode of 2025 with your weekly news roundup, Expresso News. With regards to the rest of the podcast, they will still be here as normal, but you can guarantee that there will be at least one episode where you'll get all of the latest news from the Formula One paddock, as promised, taking it, of course, from my page. Now, for those who haven't followed already, a little bit of housekeeping. Don't forget, there should be a like, a subscribe, a follow button, various different options for you to be notified when all of the latest happens from the world of Coffee Corner Motorsport. We know there's a TikTok ban going on. We know people are concerned. If you are thinking about following on different platforms, I'm now available on all of the major platforms. So Instagram, Threads, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, they're all there. Spotify, of course, for the podcast. Don't forget, just search Coffee Corner Motorsport and you will find me there, and drop a follow to get all of the latest. Now, armed with my coffee, armed with my notes about what I'm going to talk about because I'm terrible at keeping track, well, let's get straight into it. Welcome to Expresso News, Coffee Corner Motorsport, Four Beans podcast. Sit down, strap in, give us some full beans. Right, first we're going to kick off with is Williams. So we've obviously seen Carlos Sainz's picture from his actual first day at Williams. There's that picture they all seem to take in front of the reception at Grove there. And Carlos has kicked off. We've also heard a lot from James Vowles talk about what's going on. And we've also got the news about Franco Colapinto, which will tie into talking a bit about Williams for the first part of the show. So, what I want to talk about is James Vowles talking about writing off 2025. Now, the Williams hype for Carlos is massive, and rightly so. He's a world-class driver, and they've got a potentially their best lineup in years with, of course, Alex Albon and Carlos Sainz. Now, I, for one, are probably a bit concerned about Alex Albon. I think that, if Carlos comes in and, instantly is faster, is a lot better, produces better results, that's probably going to put Alex under the sort of pressure he's not been put under since he was made pretty much Williams' main driver the past couple of seasons after, of course, he was signed from Red Bull after that initial loan deal. So I think Alex has probably got a lot to lose this season. I think that he's got potential. Him and Carlos have a great partnership and taking them forward. I suppose the biggest thing for me and the biggest news is James Vowles writing off 2025. The reason I say this is we've heard it with Williams so many times. Yeah, we're concentrating on new regulations. We're concentrating on the future. We're writing off this season for next season. It's got to stop. If you're a Williams fan, you want it to stop. And especially now you've got such a great lineup with these two drivers. It can't keep going on in this world of, we're planning for next season. We're planning for the new regulations. We're planning for this. At some point, you've got to deliver it in the here and now. At what point does it become that's the pinch point? Now, James Vowles has been open and honest about taking Williams into 2026. So I suppose he's kind of answering that own question. But there's another bit of story I saw where someone was saying that if you're writing off, I think it was Oliver Oakes from Alpine, he says, if you're writing off 2025 already, that means you've not got performance out of that car. It means basically your winter's not gone well. You haven't got performance. You haven't got the time and the money to spend developing it. So you're going, Joe, what? Sod it, I'm going to go straight into 2026. That kind of feels right. It kind of feels like the sort of thing which would happen in Formula One, that if you're talking about 2026 already, that you've not managed to make the gains that you wanted in 2025. And of course, we now know with that wind tunnel testing, we're now in the rules of 2026 regulations. 1st of January, they will come online. A lot of the teams are now use that balancing act and, of course, focusing for next year. Now, for listeners of the podcast who are not quite aware, your wind tunnel and computer design time is split between your development. Now, it's up to you how you split it, but you've got to design not only this year's car and any subsequent upgrades for 2025, but you've also got that new regulation car, of course, coming in 2026. Now, that time is a total time of wind tunnel times that you get, computer design runs that you get. You can't, you don't get allocated separately for each year's regulations. It's up to you to decide how you split that up and how much you spend on this year's car and how much you spend on next year's car. So that's what I mean by that balancing act. That's where I'm coming from, that you've got to find a balancing between remaining competitive in 2025, but also not putting too much into 2025 that you lose sight of 2026. And of course, that massive regulation change with not just the engine changes, but also the aero changes that are going to happen. So it is a really fine tuning. Most of 2025 development, to be honest, is done by now. It will be talk about upgrades. It will be talking little and often. There won't be a lot of teams spending a lot of time currently on 2025 regulation cars, believe it or not. I mean, we've not even seen them yet. We're not even going to see them for what, 2 months is the first race now in Australia. So we're not going to see those cars, but ironically, they're pretty much done development wise, just with a scheduled set of updates to go in and all eyes on 2026. But yeah, so we've got James Vowles obviously writing that off. Brings us on to Franco Colapinto, obviously going to Alpine from Williams. Not a surprise, really. Flavio's been touting this one around for a while. He's been talking about how he wanted Franco. I think Jack's in the business of, ironically, Flavio is Jack's manager, so you kind of think he'd be happy with him. But he's wanted Franco. And the reason he wants Franco is it's financial. And I hate saying that in Formula One. And I keep saying this, Formula One, unfortunately, isn't about the 20 best drivers. You've got to take into all the financial trappings that come with these drivers, all of the endorsements, all of the sponsorship money they bring in. That's why Red Bull has such a debate over Sergio Perez. That's why they kind of, ummed and ahed about whether to keep him or not, because financially, he was sound. Performance-wise, he unfortunately wasn't. And that's what it come down to in the end. So Franco Colapinto is in that same category. A lot of 𝐃𝐒𝐄 sponsors are now looking at where to go. With obviously 𝐃𝐒𝐄 going. Franco is an obvious choice in terms of where they put their money. And they're also looking at the future. So they want their driver on the grid. Now, Jack Doohan is a rookie driver. He's on a small, short-term contract. He's not on a 5-race contract. So don't get confused with that. Every contract in Formula One has a performance clause in it, basically. The bigger you get, the easier on the driver that performance clause is. And when you're like Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, you've actually got performance clauses against the teams, not just how you perform, but actually how the teams perform. But if you're a rookie, you've got no sway in that. So therefore, it's safe to say that Jack would have a performance clause in there, which maybe looks into his race results over the first 5 or 6 races. But it's not a contract for 5 to 6 races. It's a breakpoint. Yeah, we heard a lot about Sergio Perez's performance clauses. They are in there for drivers. Like I say, the more successful you are, the better driver you are, the better the performance clauses are for you as a driver. The more of a rookie you are, the better they are for the team in terms of getting rid of you. Logan Sargent, all those sort of drivers, their performance clauses will be quite easily to break by the team in terms of bringing in another driver. Now, Jack realistically is going to be on a low money contract. Let's be honest, he's a rookie. He's not had a massive amount of success in terms of being a championship at junior categories, so he won't command the sort of money that maybe some of the drivers coming back into were. And ultimately, Alpine would have haggled him down to get him in the seat on the basis of you'll get the Formula One seat. So to buy Jack out of his contract, even irrelevant to those performance clauses, is nice and easy to do. It's going to cost £1 million. Franco's sponsor would put that money up if it meant Franco getting in the car. So to Alpine, it's a complete win-win situation, you see. They can just literally go to Franco's sponsor and say, we want to get rid of Jack. It's going to cost us £2 million. And one of them write a check for it. Alpine aren't even out of pocket. Bear in mind, all of this stuff comes out of the cost cap. You don't have to, as in it's outside the cost cap, you don't have to justify it in any way. Drivers' contracts are not part of the cost cap. So all of this can be done without any financial input from Alpine, which at the moment, let's be honest, that's what they want. That's what Flavio's doing, is streamlining this, making the business bigger. Now, there was a bit of confusion when it's a loan deal or when it's a permanent deal. It's still not 100% clear. The way I've read it is he is a Alpine driver for the next 5 years. That's been confirmed by his manager. There's a bit of talk about the wording she used, whether or not she meant it was a loan deal for 5 years. 5 years feels rather long to be a loan deal. She didn't talk about Williams having a recall option in there. What she talked about was more having a buyback option. So to me, it looks like Franco has gone to Alpine. He's on a 5-year deal, but Williams have a first refusal buyback option in there, possibly at a set price where they could buy him back if, Carlos or Alex, they wanted to make a change that way. So that's the way I'm getting around this Franco Colapinto. It does, of course, mean that they could, of course, replace Pierre Gasly if they wanted to. I don't see that happening. Pierre is a great driver for them, a great marketing asset. Unless Pierre gets a better offer, which I'm not sure in the shake-up of things where that better offer would be, despite him performing well. I think that they're trying to sell it as his package. I think this whole thing is around a sale. We shut down the engine side of it. We've now got 2 drivers, if you include Franco into that mix. who are long-term drivers, young drivers. We've got Mercedes engine coming on board. We've heard they're taking the Mercedes gearbox for the first year of 2026 and then going to develop their own. We've got the Enstone factory facility. It's lined up for a sale. We've been talking about this for so long now. Everything that Alpine are doing screams buy me, no matter what you think. So that's where I feel that one's going. That's Franco Colapinto to Alpine. I think it's a case of when, not if. You don't pay anywhere between 10 and 20 million. It's from what we've heard, Alpine paid that money up front to Williams. So Red Bull wanted to pay not as much as 20 million and wanted to stagger it based on performances, based over a timescale. Apparently, Flavio Briatore and Alpine have actually just gone, no, we're just going to pay it outright. So Williams have banked that money. So great deal for Williams. Not too sure what it means long-term future for them. We've obviously, like I said, Carlos and Alex either wanting the team to perform, that's their aim, or would be looking at going to a better team in 2026 if the car doesn't perform. So I'm not quite sure where that leaves Williams in terms of their development and that side, unless, of course, they've got that buyback clause in there where they can go straight to Alpine and say, can we have Franco back? The other bit of news we're going to come on to now is, of course, Mike Krack being replaced by Andy Cowell at Aston Martin. This was a move we all suspected to come. Not necessarily Andy Cowell taking over. He's, of course, the CEO. He was appointed to take over Martin Whitmarsh last year. He's just completed 100 days as the Aston Martin CEO. Not quite sure if that's a short-term interim appointment. They didn't make it very clear on the press release they sent out. They just said that obviously Mike Krack was stepping down, so he's now in charge of trackside engineering. It's a role that suits Mike. I think he'd be very good at it. I think he'd be very successful at it. I think it's a role that actually he will play really well. It's good to see they're going to keep that. Andy Cowell's obviously taken over in the interim. Like I say, they haven't said whether it's long-term or not. This kind of feels like this is Aston Martin making moves. They've obviously got people coming in. They've got the new guy signed at Ferrari. I can't remember his name. He's about to join once his garden leaves finish off. We obviously know Adrian Newey is coming as well. So 𝐷𝐿, that's it. 𝐕𝐈𝐃𝐿. So we've got him joining. We've obviously got Adrian Newey coming. It feels to me like there's a bit of cost cap manoeuvring going on by Aston Martin here. We know you can only exclude the top three earners. Obviously, your drivers are excluded, like I said earlier. Your top three earners are excluded. It feels like there might be a bit of movement because they're moving people on to different departments like WEC and the motorsports we've heard that touted about this week. So for me, it feels like they're making some manoeuvres to their structure to fit everybody in with the cost cap. We know that Adrian arrives around March time. He's talked about being hampered by Red Bull. So Adrian's confirmed he's done nothing on 2026 regulations with regards to Red Bull technical design or anything like that. Since he handed his notice, he's not worked on the Formula One side at all. He's been working on the RB17 road car project, and so he's not done anything with regards to Formula One. So he's talking a lot about having his tools taken away, as he put it in an interview. Just this week, he talked about how he feels that he's going to be 2 months behind the curve when he joins Aston Martin. So I think what Aston are trying to do is lay everything up ready for him when he comes in, so he can try and make that immediate difference in terms of what he can bring to 2025. He's said that his focus is, of course, 2026. But like anything, if he can make some gains on 2025, I think he will. But I don't think it's as important for Aston Martin as what 2026 is. So I think it will be a supplement. If he can make changes, he will. If not, they won't compromise 2026 in any way whatsoever. But again, with Adrian being a part owner, a lot of share options, a lot of this feels like it's a cost cap maneuver to make sure they're under the cost cap by moving people around. Now, remember the way the cost cap works. If you can prove that a member of staff does so much work on a different project, you can transfer out those costs. And that's what I mean by this manoeuvring. So I feel that Aston Martin are doing a lot of this where they're saying this person's work on this project, which isn't Formula One. So therefore, 80% of his wages don't apply. And that's how the teams are getting around the cost cap. They're using various different methods. That's a very popular one. We saw it with, obviously Red Bull did it with the powertrain project. They also did it with, Adrian's project as well. We know that Mercedes have been doing it. They've done it with the Ineos boat project. It's how the top teams get around this. We know that Ferrari did it with the hypercar project. It's a very common way of getting around the cost cap. It's perfectly legal. Right or wrong in terms of morally right is irrelevant on this. In terms of the eyes of the FIA and their regulations, it's perfectly fine to do that. So that's what they're doing. So that's why I feel these moves are being made around. I think we might still see a new team principal, but it remains to be seen. Right, what next? Ferrari teasers. Who's having fun with the Ferrari social media teasers? We know that Lewis Hamilton is due in Italy at any time soon. They're keeping very low-key on that. A lot of reasons for this. They don't want to launch any livery yet because they don't want to spoil it. They don't want to launch new sponsors yet because the sponsor will be unhappy with a Instagram launch or a quick photo of someone seeing him on track. So expect a lot of unbranded Ferrari Lewis Hamilton with just red on it. The teasers seem to be teasing to this deeper red that we saw, very similar to when they celebrated their anniversary a few years ago, where it was a burgundy sort of red. If you look at all the social media posts, they're all teasing this different sort of red. So there's a bit of a deeper red rather than the current Ferrari red that we're used to. It could just be a teaser, but it's appearing on all of them. So you kind of think that, that's a nod to it. They're doing a lot around having fun. We've seen the dog bowls. We've seen a lot of fun posts about it, printed out the drivers' lanyards, things like that. Ferrari are obviously building this anticipation. Why not? The whole world wants to see Lewis Hamilton in a Ferrari, so they're building this up. We know he's going to do a bit of testing, so in terms of the older cars, so testing the previous cars, the TPC testing, we know he's going to do a bit of that. They're expecting it to be filmed because it normally is. So that's what I mean. I think we're going to get a very stripped down, unbadged Ferrari car, Lewis with unbranded overalls going on, and just some pictures of him in there, and probably some factory pictures is what I'm expecting. And they've obviously got their launch just after the F175 launch as well, which is their main car launch, so they'll be saving it all for that. Let's be honest about it. But yeah, Ferrari are going to run Lewis Hamilton at some point. Lewis notoriously isn't a fan of the simulator, has apparently been in the simulator, so that's quite interesting that he's done that one. There's talk of Angela coming back. So Angela's been doing a bit of teasing on social media. If you follow her, you would have seen that she put a picture of her on the ski slopes, the same time as what Lewis was skiing. In the background was a picture of the ski slope number, which was number 44, red number 44, decked out in red. A lot of people are saying, is this a sign? Now, Angela has, of course, been doing IndyCar. One of Lewis's most trusted people. He didn't replace her at Mercedes. He used one of the Mercedes guys to fill in for that gap. So it is still a vacancy. We know that personal trainers normally go with a driver. Mercedes has confirmed that the one Lewis used last season isn't going with him. So that is still a vacancy. So, it is a possibility. Let's be honest, she's been working with Marcus Armstrong, obviously a fellow countryman from New Zealand over in IndyCar. They've talked about not knowing what the plans are for this season. So we could be seeing Angela actually going back to Lewis. Now, like I said, there's been nothing official. It's just all rumour, gossip and speculation, what we're being teased. Angela seemed to have shut down on social media because I think everyone's gone mad on it. I think it'd be a great move if Lewis can convince Angela to come back. I think it'd be great for Ferrari to have that sort of mentality. Angela was his most trusted person, and when he got him, to his peak performance when he's winning championships, I think he missed her last year in terms of just that confidence, that someone he can trust, someone who's in Camp Lewis rather than being in a Mercedes camp. So I think, with Bono obviously having to stop, because he's obviously taken that promotion with Mercedes last year, Lewis kind of needs some people in his camp, and I think that Angela would be absolutely amazing to see. She's a great personality, and I, for one, are hoping for once these rumours are true, and that we see an Angela-Lewis reunion at Ferrari, because that would just be amazing starts of the season. Then talking about his former team, we know that Kimi Antonelli has been testing the W11. A lot of talk that the W11 doesn't exist. So for those who don't know, the way the cost cap was around then, a lot of teams, were utilising tools. It was height of COVID, etc., etc. A lot of the W11s were turned into W12. So a lot of people saying you can't run the W11. They have done. So they've run it in Jerez this week with Kimi Antonelli. Now, this isn't a test of any sort. That's what's a W11. This is just to gauge his fitness, gauge where he is in terms of sharpness for the new season, see if there's anything they need to work on. Of course, a massive season for Kimi Antonelli this season, filling in for Lewis Hamilton. So the W11 is run. Apparently, there was 6 chassis. 2 of them were never converted. The reason they don't run them because they don't have spare parts for them. So it is unusual to see a W11 on the track. It came out in Jerez with a camo livery to hide everything. That's a sponsorship thing. We know that a lot of sponsors have changed since obviously Lewis went. New season come in. Obviously, they've lost Tommy Hilfiger. They've lost Puma. They've got Adidas on board now. The camo livery is there pure and simple, so they don't have to waste time with a mock livery in the meantime. They can't use the old one because the sponsors are gone, don't want to tease a new one, so they put a camo livery on it. That's why it's a camo livery. It's nothing to hide anything. It's a W11. You don't need to hide anything. It is a W11 because the W11, because of the age of the car, comes under the historic testing, not under the testing in previous cars. Now, the testing in previous cars will let you run the cars, but after Max tested the RB in Imola last year, so he did a lot of work on the RB19 Ready 4 to find out the faults with the RB20. He ran around Imola. He did a lot of talk on that one. And the way they've done it this year, they put a limit on it. So if you're a current driver on the grid, you can only do 1,000 kilometers of testing in previous cars, and you can only have 20 outings. Now, last year, you could have whatever you want, which is why Mercedes backed Kimi in that massive program of doing, so many runs on it because they knew they'd get away with it. But what the FIA were concerned about was they were concerned about the teams basically building the testing program, in essence, and almost having a whole season of testing in previous cars. Now, even though you can't change the components on that car, you get track data and you can manipulate stuff and you can, look at stuff and go, actually, you get a lot of data, even if it's data from a car you already know. So that's why they clamped down on it. So the FIA clamped down on it. So now you can only do those 20 days. And if you're a current driver, you're limited to 1,000 kilometers. Mercedes want to keep that. They don't want to bank that. So they've used the W11. That's why they've used the W11, because that falls outside of it. And that falls under the historic car program, which has very lenient in terms of running and testing restrictions on it. So that's why it is a W11, not a W12. That's not to say they've not converted parts back to a W11 from W12, but that's why they did that one. And the reason behind that camo livery is purely from a marketing sponsorship point of view and nothing else on that front. Then talk about previous car tests. We got a first, which is, of course, Haas doing theirs with Ollie Behrman and, of course, Esteban Ocon, who will be joining a new lineup for Haas this year. They're going to miss Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hülkenberg, I feel. But Haas doing their first ever previous car testing, mainly due to the Toyota Gazoo Racing funding that they've received. So we know they got that partnership going. A lot of talk about Toyota coming back on a full-time basis. That's a lot of years down the line. It's not something they talk about now. It's something they talk about. It may be something they want to do in the future. Their partnership with Haas is mainly geared around financial aid, which is why Haas can now run previous car testing, and also around facilities. So they're going to make up their parts for them. Eventually, they're going to change that. We know they've got a simulator in the works. So at the moment, Haas have to rely on when they use Ferrari simulator over in Maranello. It's not ideal for them. They can't use it all the time like a lot of teams can. And of course, Ferrari take priority on that simulator with it being there. So Toyota are going to build their own simulator for Haas, which Haas are going to use. We know that they've now got wind tunnel use in Cologne, the Toyota one. So that will ease the pressure of them using the Ferrari one in Maranello. So obviously it used to be used by McLaren before McLaren's come back online. So Toyota have got that vacancy in there where they can accommodate a Formula 1 team. They're used to accommodating a Formula 1 team. Haas haven't got one, so it works out ideal. But in terms of a return to full-time racing from Toyota, it's not something that's going to happen now. It's something that's planned for in the future. It's something that they want to bring on board, not something that's immediately going to happen. It's a long way down the line if it does happen. Now, in terms of Cadillac, so we heard the news about Cadillac. Now, Cadillac is very interesting. So I did a couple of posts on this over the winter break, and the Cadillac GM Motors Formula 1 team isn't what it seems. So TWG Global is in charge of the project. It's not actually General Motors. It's not actually Cadillac. It's TWG Global. Now, all the signs are going to be changing to Cadillac Formula 1 Racing, whatever they've called it now. But it's actually owned privately. It's not owned by General Motors. And that's really key, I think, because all of this talk of this General Motors works team that we're being promised actually isn't quite true when you scratch the surface and peel back the layers like an onion. You've actually got capitalists in there, and you've got pretty much the same setup as what was before. We know that TW Global is taken over in terms of Andretti Motor Racing anyway, so it is effectively Andretti just renamed and just with the name dropped. Now Cadillac are going to build a new engine, so at the moment we know that they're coming in with the Ferrari deal. There's been talk of 2028. I think it'll be longer. They're talking about the end of the decade. Both sides haven't put an end date on that engine supply as such. They can go however they need to, but it will start off with a Ferrari engine. They're building one, I think it was in North Carolina, so General Motors are now committing to building one. That's their Formula 1 project. Will it be ready for 2028? I'm not too sure, but I'm not too sure they're overly worried because, like I said, that Ferrari deal seems to be open-ended to about 2010 from what I can see. So they might even go into new regulations of engines, so don't be surprised by that one. But yeah, that's where General Motors are at the moment. So it's a private company with basically Cadillac backing and branding it at the moment. Lots of speculation over drivers. It'd be wrong to sit here now and speculate over who's going to get a 2026 seat. Loads going to happen between now and then. I'd imagine Sergio Perez might be in the mix due to his sponsorship and his commercial bringing it in. Colton Herta has long been talked about getting into Formula 1 anyway. It'd be an ideal time, obviously, given his ties to the group and everything and his ties to Andretti. That'd be an obvious choice. But sometimes the obvious ones we don't get Daniel Ricciardo ruled himself out. Valtteri Bottas, we know he's keen on it because he wants to return to Formula 1 racing. I imagine people like Joe would be looking at it as well. So it would be wrong to say who that seat's going to go to. Just that actually it's going to be a prime seat for 2026 on the basis of it's 2 extra seats on the Formula 1 grid. Now, with regards to driver lineups, we've also got a commentary lineup for Formula 1 TV. With the course news that Will Buxton will be leaving to do IndyCar with Fox. Now, originally when this first came out, it wasn't quite clear if it meant he would do the 2, because it talked about commuting, but it is now confirmed by Will himself that he will be leaving Formula 1 TV and presenting IndyCar over on Fox. Now, this is a great move for Will. I think it opens up to, obviously, a new market. In America, he's obviously got more popular with Drive to Survive and F1 TV, which is, of course, the go-to in the different countries. We normally have Sky here in the UK. And the Fox coverage looks great for IndyCar. They're obviously on a bounce, moving it up. Lots of advertising, lots of money going into it. They talk about using drones. I think it's going to be a great move for him personally. It's always good to freshen it up. Like I say, here in the UK, we don't have F1 TV, so I admittedly don't watch it as much as what I do Sky, because Sky's easier. With F1 TV, you've got to watch it on demand later on, or put VPN in, do those bits on there, which isn't ideal. Takes a bit of time for me. I'm a simple guy like that, so I haven't watched of it. But he's going to be lost. But they've got some absolutely amazing talent who can step up and either do more races or or even get someone new in. So I've got no doubt that F1 TV will replace him and go from strength to strength. And I've got no doubt that Will's going to be a success in IndyCar. And who knows, it might be a good move to get a lot of people over here in the UK watching IndyCar as well. It might be quite a move where, people who don't normally tune in suddenly think, actually, I'm going to see what this is all about. So quite a smart move by Fox. Sauber is the other one we're going to come on to and probably finish off with. So Sauber made all sorts of moves. So they got Alessandro is moved from his role as, he was an advisor to the Formula 1 activities, whatever it was, an interim team principal. He stepped down. He's moving aside now. He's gone. They said that Jonathan Wheatley was due to start in the summer, but they've negotiated the exit, of course, from Red Bull. Now, Jonathan's on garden leave, was due to start in the summer. They're now saying it's now April, so they've negotiated an early release from Jonathan, so he's going to be coming in. I imagine Binotto will step in the interim between now and then. It makes sense. Obviously, he's in charge of the whole Formula 1 operation now for Audi, and it just keeps the seat warm until Jonathan Wheatley is ready to come in April. But clever move by Sauber to negotiate that one. Sauber and Audi as one whole are in the sort of Formula 1 doghouse at the moment with regards to the cost cap. So there's been new amounts agreed for the cost cap, and there's been an increase for Sauber on the basis of their operations are based in Switzerland. It's much more expensive to live there, about 30-40% more expensive than the rest of Europe. And obviously the UK, because we're not in Europe anymore. And they've been given a inflated cost cap to cope with that. Now, 9 out of the 10 teams said no. 10th team was obviously Sauber. They said yes. But the FIA said, no, we're going to go with it, and we're going to give him an increase. So a lot of talk that the teams are not happy about that. Ferrari especially, they're saying, well, hold on, what about us? We're over in Italy. You haven't done anything with us. Haas is saying we've got a lot of operation in Italy. You've then obviously got Visa Cash App Racing Bulls, almost forgot their name there. They've obviously changed it. They've obviously got base in Italy as well as the UK. Incidentally, they've just moved, and a bit of news happened over the winter. They've actually moved location for all of their aerodynamics. They were in Bicester. They've now got a purpose build in Milton Keynes at the Red Bull factory. So it's not connected. It's a separate part on the site. Obviously, Red Bull's got a new wind tunnel going in there, which obviously 𝐕𝐃 share as well. So it makes sense to put them all under one. But yeah, so Sauber are obviously in a bit of the Formula 1 doghouse with the teams at the moment for getting an increase in their cost cap. It's not something they've currently enjoyed. And when you've got teams like Williams wanting to spend over and beyond improving their factory and getting denied, it's a bit of a sore point and a bit of a rightly so one. So yeah, I think it will be interesting to see how that one plays out. Audi, of course, has sold 30% stake in the team since we last did the podcast. So they've sold 30% to, I think it was a Saudi Arabia fund. That's obviously takes some financial pressure off Audi. So again, it's no longer a complete works team. It's now going to be part owned. So you can see how these things are all playing out now, that actually these work teams who are coming on board aren't 100% involved. A lot of talk around obviously what happens now with Yuki Tsunoda and Liam Lawson as well. Obviously, Liam's going into a Red Bull seat. Yuki's been overlooked. He's out of contract at the end of 2025. I'm still expecting Yuki to follow Honda to, of course, Aston Martin. I'm expecting that role to be a reserve role, though, not a main role. I think they're carrying on with Fernando for a couple of years. I think Fernando's openly talking about end of 2026 being like his point to retire. So I think they're aiming for that when he's going to go on to do, I think, a ambassador role from everything we've seen with Aston Martin. Going to keep him involved. He's going to be involved with Adrian on some stuff, maybe do some other racing for him, that sort of thing. So I'm fully expecting that. I think Yuki will go probably as a reserve to start off with, or there will be some sort of Honda Japanese tie-up in terms of the reserves. So there's a lot of these movements going on with engine deals, a lot going on with these things on that one. So that's the way I see that one playing out with Yuki. I think that Honda will have some influence on Yuki with Aston Martin, but I think it'll be more of a reserve role rather than a full-time role. And I think that's it. We got half hour of Expresso news. I think we call it a day on that one. Do me a favour and let me know what you think of this. I don't know if this is something you want, just a roundup of the headlines. Like I say, I really want to do it. I'm really keen to do it because I want to get more of a regular podcast for those listeners out there, so that you've got a guaranteed weekly show coming. Then obviously the bonus of one after a race, debriefing the race, talk about other bits of Formula 1 news as well. So yeah, we genuinely appreciate your feedback on it. I've got a website now if people want to catch everything, which is www.coffeecornermotorsport.com. That houses everything. So it's not designed to replace anything. Nothing's changing. But I wanted somewhere where I could put everything, where you can go and read the articles, you can listen to the podcast, you can follow on social media if you want to. And I wanted it to have a platform where it's just a central place where all of that information is. So if you do get a chance, please go check it out. Let me know what you think about it. Like I said, if you are following on TikTok, places like that, where you're a bit worried about the TikTok ban coming, Coffee Corner Motorsport is available on all of the platforms. Don't forget to hit that like and follow, subscribe button, and I will catch you all soon. Before I go, just want to say a huge thank you for obviously everyone who voted in the podcast awards. Voting is now closed. We should find out in a couple of weeks. Whilst I'm not confident of beating the likes of, Sky F1, Talking Balls, Fast and the Curious, to be nominated is just amazing. Ultimately, like I've said before, I feel very humbled. I'm just a guy in a shed, drinks coffee, talking Formula 1, and to be in that category and for people to vote and nominate is honestly means the world to me. So a huge thank you to everyone who managed to vote on that, and I appreciate every single one of the comments, every single one of the votes. Honestly, I'm just stoked to have been nominated. So whatever happens when the results are announced, I'm just so proud to have been in there, and proud that we've taken and built a community, which ultimately I've always wanted to build this community where we can just sit and chat F1. So we don't have to make it dramatized. We don't have to make it controversial. We can just sit and talk F1, sit and chill in a shed with a coffee. What more could you want? Chatting about cars. So yeah, huge appreciation for that one. Huge thank you for listening. And I'll see you all next week. Catch you soon.